What's going on, Orange Nation? This is Neil Adler with another episode of Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. Happy Tuesday. How we doing, friends? Monday good? Hope everyone having a great week so far. Syracuse football is on a bye week this week. We'll get into some Syracuse football stuff later in the week, certainly quarterback talk and all that. But I'm going to do a lot of recruiting today and a little bit of Syracuse basketball in the NCAA tournament because, hey, listen, we're less than a month away from the start of the Syracuse basketball season, and I can't wait. But we're going to start with some recruiting stuff. So certainly for Syracuse and its peers, the 2026 class, if we're talking about high school recruiting, not the transfer portal, the 2026 class is coming more and more into focus. The early signing period for 2026 prospects in basketball is in mid-November. The traditional signing periods in next April. So we're seeing more and more high school seniors verbally commit to schools. It kind of got off to a slow start. A lot of that has to do with more of a focus on transfer portal recruiting and NIL, rev share, yada, yada, yada. I've talked about that on Syracuse Central a couple times. And for Syracuse, I feel like they have five guys they've honed in on for 2026, and then could be some reclass guys. And so I'm going to talk specifically about Jordan Smith Jr. in this first segment, but if we're talking 2026, again, this is just my opinion, but I do have sources. I talk to people, and stuff could change. But Jordan Smith Jr., Duron Rippey Jr., Dakari Spear, Asher Elson, and Vaughn Carvalho are the five I think they're honing in on right now. A guy like Clyde Walters, who's a 2027, plays in the overtime elite now. He might reclass. That's another guy that maybe we think about. A couple other overtime elite guys, a couple over 2027 guys, including one that plays in overtime elite. Also could be 2020 targets to go from 2027 to 2026, and they have SU offers, but I don't know how heavy Syracuse is in for them right now and what the interest level is from the recruits. So I'll keep tabs on that, but that's kind of where I think it is. And clearly, without question, from my perspective, the two guys that are at the top of the list for Syracuse are Jordan Smith Jr. and Duron Rippey Jr. And I'm going to talk about Jordan right now and then Duron on the next one. Syracuse has been recruiting those two guys as hard as any school over the last couple of years. So Jordan Smith Jr. was offered by Syracuse in early May of 2023. We've talked about him a little bit on Syracuse Central. He's the number 2 overall prospect, according to several recruiting services in 2026. He's from the DMV, where I am from. He's a 5-star shooting guard, plays for St. Paul VI Catholic High School, which is a really, really excellent program, not just in the DC area, but nationally. He had been playing for Team Takeover on the EYBL circuit. Adrian Autry and Brendan Strawn both have deep connections to Team Takeover, and Autry used to be a assistant at St. Paul VI way back in the day. So why am I bringing Jordan up now? Well, amid the fall recruiting period, Syracuse was in for Jordan at St. Paul VI last week. I saw it on social media and had it confirmed. And Autry was there, Strawn was there, Griff was there. I'm not sure. I don't think Dan Engelstad or Alex Klein were there, but if they were, my apologies. But that was just based on what I saw on social media. And I guess the main reason for bringing Jordan up here is that, and Syracuse is in his top 5 or top 6. I believe it's a top 6. And the rumorville has been that Duke's the leader. Frankly, I think you gotta definitely he's considering teams. I think Arkansas is on the list. I think Syracuse is in the mix heavy. I think Georgetown, even though people are like, oh, Georgetown's on the up and up a bit, I think. And he's a local team, and they have connections, the staff there, to his, or relationships with his, AAU and high school programs, just like Syracuse does. So, I'm not saying that Syracuse is going to win out for Jordan Smith Jr., but they've put in the work for him, and if they don't win out, it won't be because they didn't try hard enough. And I can't always say that about Syracuse in past years before the new staff came in, and I don't want to go off on tangents, but Strawn's been in for Smith overseas twice with USA Basketball Junior National Team events. They've been in for him on the EYBL circuit. They've done visits with him at his school. They've visited or watched him at showcase events. I mean, I could go on and on forever. He took an unofficial to Syracuse last September of 2024. I've been told more than once that he's expected to visit again before he makes his decision. And it could be, and it looks like he won't sign until the regular signing period next April. So Syracuse has time here. And what I was told not too long ago is that they want to get him on campus when there's actual basketball game going on. So, do I think that Syracuse could win out if he never visits Syracuse again and only took the unofficial last year? Yeah. I mean, look at Calvin Russell with football. He's never officially visited Syracuse. He's unofficially visited a couple times, and he picked Syracuse. But I think it would be in their best interest to get him on the campus for an official, and I think they will. And it could be November, December. Who knows? It could be into next year, especially since, if he's not going to sign till April. I'm a homer, but I'm always also realistic. And again, in talking to people within the that have intel about the program and analysts in this, like, if I had to take the field versus Syracuse for Jordan Smith Jr., I'd take the field just because he's got some heavyweight programs on him. But ultimately, it wouldn't surprise me if Syracuse wins out for him. It would not surprise me at all. They put in the work. They've been on him for 2+ years. And we'll see how it goes. I'll keep tabs on an official visit or a second visit to Syracuse for Jordan Smith Jr. And then we're going to move now to the other top target for Syracuse in the 2026 class. And this is Deron Rippey Jr. He's from New York City. He's from Brooklyn, my mom's hometown. So I got an affinity for the young man. And I've gotten to know his dad. And he's a really good student. He's unselfish. He's confident, but he's humble. He comes from a nice family, and I'm rooting for him. I want him to pick Syracuse. And again, even like with Jordan Smith Jr., I think I'd take the field over Syracuse, but it won't surprise me if Syracuse wins out for one of these guys. I would be a little bit surprised if they went out for both of them, but it could happen. But that would be pretty unreal. Deron is a 5-star point guard. He's ranked as high as number 8 by Rivals. We'll see if he pushes higher than that. I personally think he is a top 5 overall prospect, but I'm not a scout. I'm not an analyst. But just based on what he's been doing, and part of the reason I'm bringing him up today is, so over the weekend, he was at the Border League, which is like this annual showcase in Las Vegas. A lot of really excellent teams and excellent prospects. And Alan Griffin was on hand, I was told, by Deron's dad, and Alan was watching Deron, but other Syracuse recruits too, I would assume. And so Deron plays for the Blair Academy in New Jersey, and they played some really good competition. And Blair went 2-0, and Rippey averaged. His dad told me it was like 16.5 points, like 7.5 boards, 5 assists, 2 steals. Hope I got that right. I have it in a text somewhere. But he played well, and they won both games. And in the first game, they beat a team out of the Atlanta-based Professional League Overtime League called RWE. And Clyde Walters, the Syracuse target, plays on that team. And so does Taylor Kinney, who's a Kansas commit, 5-star point guard in 2026. And Blair was down like 23 points at one point, but they ended up winning by, I think, 2. And Rippey played really well. And then that was Friday night. And then Saturday, and the game was on NBA TV on Saturday, they played Notre Dame High School from California. And Notre Dame is led by the number 1 player in 2026, Tyron Stokes. He's a 5-star small forward. And Rippey, his dad told me that his son hit the game winner when I was talking to him on the phone on Sunday. He said he hit the game winner. And I was like, yeah, Deron. But anyway, they won by 1 point. And so they had a pair of really good wins. Griff was there, among other teams. And Deron's just playing really well. I mean, he's got a USA basketball training camp, mini camp, whatever you want to call it, in Colorado Springs coming up. He played well a couple days before the Border League out in Vegas. He was at the Wooten 150 camp, played well there. He's just on fire. He played really well in AAU, other showcases throughout the spring and summer. He was at one Adidas showcase, I think it was in Italy in the spring. And so just like with Jordan Smith, Syracuse has been on Deron for 2+ years. They offered him late August 2023. He took an unofficial to Syracuse on Jim Boeheim Day, late February 2024. 2 weekends ago, he officially visited Syracuse, and his dad told me that the visit went well, and Syracuse showed Duran and his family, if he picked Syracuse, what they could offer him, and they want the ball in his hands and make an immediate impact. They obviously want him to help get Syracuse back to where Syracuse has been. And Duran's dad goes back with Griff and Adrian Autry, and I'm not saying Syracuse is going to win out here, but they did a good job with the official visit, and we'll see. He did meet his dad told me that Duran met Calvin Russell, who was also there for the Duke game 2 weekends ago. Obviously, that was not a good game, and Calvin, is a 2026 five-star wide receiver, verbally committed to Syracuse football, but he's likely to play Syracuse basketball, at least initially. We'll see how that goes long term. So Calvin and Duran did meet. Look, Duran has a top, I think, 9 right now. Syracuse is in it. He's currently on a visit to Kentucky. He's still got a visit, his dad told me, Duke, Tennessee, and NC State. Again, I take the field over Syracuse, but Syracuse has a shot. Like Griff and Autry and Alex Klein and Strong. I mean, they've all been at events for Duran. They've shown him a ton of loyalty, and that they're prioritizing him. And so again, just like with Jordan Smith Jr., if Syracuse doesn't win out, it won't be because they didn't fight hard enough on the recruiting trail. So we'll see. And the other thing I'll say is Syracuse has recruited well at the high school level in the 2 years that Autry has been at the helm. And they've also gotten some good guys out of the portal. Last year wasn't so great, no disrespect, but the team just struggled. But they got JJ Starling out of the portal, a couple years ago. And then this past off season, they got a 6-member class, including a former recruit and Tyler Betsy and William Kyle and Nate George and Nate King. So they can recruit. I think the real question is Autry the guy to lead the program, in terms of an X's and O's and being the head coach? Some people are like, well, maybe Autry is just a really good associate head coach and a lead recruiter. And maybe they're right. I hope not, because I'm rooting for Autry and I'm rooting for Griff and all those guys. But we'll see. But Syracuse has recruited well. When Autry took over the program in March of 2023, they went out and they had been on Donnie Freeman, but he wasn't in their. He had like a list cut, and Syracuse wasn't on it. And when Autry took over, and then Brennan Strawn came in, among others. Well, actually, they retained GMAC and Griff, but they ended up getting Donnie Freeman. So that was big. He ended up the number 6 player in that 2024 class. 2025 class, the prep level, Kyan Anthony, Sadiq White, both top 30-ish guys. Both played in All-America showcases, not the McDonald's one, but other ones. What was it, Jordan Brand and Iverson or whatever? And Luke Fennell is a 4-star that was playing professionally in Australia. So they can recruit. We'll see how it translates on the court. But my point here is that we don't know how big Syracuse's 2026 class is going to be, because, you got to factor in guys, they have 13 guys on scholarship this year, and you can have up to 15. But we don't know how big their class is going to be, because guys will transfer out, possibly. Obviously, some guys will have exhausted their eligibility. Guys will transfer in. So, and there's more emphasis on portal recruiting versus high school recruiting. But I think Syracuse can have a nice 2026 class. And I don't know how. I've heard rumblings. I don't know this myself personally. I probably could try and dig around. But I feel like people have been saying that Jordan Smith might be pretty good friends with either Sadiq and or Kyan Anthony. I'm not sure about Duran. But, that kind of stuff factors in. I would say some too. Certainly, Kyan had said, once Sadiq committed, that he was like, yeah, I'm all in on this too. Let's do this. I mean, obviously, he didn't commit till later on publicly. But yeah, I mean, I think Syracuse could have a nice 2026 class at the prep level. Again, if they got Jordan Smith Jr. and Duran Rippey Jr., whew. I mean, those are 2 5-stars. One's number 2 overall in the class. The other one's the number 1 point guard, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. And Rippey could move into the top 10 everywhere. He's, again, number 8 rivals. But it's And Von Carvalho is a 4-star. He's a solid guy, and Asher Elson's an underrated 4-star big, and Dakari Spears a 4-star shooting guard. And then some of those other guys I mentioned, and I'm not sure these days what the deal is with like 5-star Alex Costanza, 4-star MJ Madison, but the 5 I mentioned earlier in 2026 plus potential reclasses, and then kind of not sure, but we'll see about Costanza and or Madison. That is where I believe Syracuse is in 2026. I could be wrong, but I follow recruiting pretty closely, and so we'll see. But again, I don't. I'd be a little surprised if Syracuse gets both Rippey and Smith. I wouldn't be surprised if Syracuse gets one of them. I also wouldn't be surprised if Syracuse didn't get either of them. And that doesn't mean that Syracuse stinks at recruiting or we should like lambaste the coaching staff. Because, dude, I'm telling you, friends, they're putting in the work. They're putting in the work. So I'm going to move to 2027 here. It's earlier on 2027. Just June 15th was when coaches could start reaching out to 2027 guys as they're heading into their junior years of high school. I think they could start taking officials August 1st. And Syracuse, as far as I can tell, has offered, I think, at least 15 guys in 2027. Again, the interest level or the pursuit of Syracuse to some of these guys might not be super heavy these days, or it could like ebb and flow. And the interest level of these offerees in Syracuse, we don't 100% know all that right now. And again, but if I had to look at 3 guys that I think we want to follow pretty closely in terms of Syracuse and what could be in this 2027 class, it's Zion Green, Theo Edema, and Jaylon Lyons. Again, there's other guys that they're in on, and like a guy like Clyde Walters, who I mentioned, he plays for Overtime Elite now, and Griff was at the Overtime Elite like annual pro day combine thing, and Asher Elson plays in it, and a couple other guys. Anderson Diaz, a 2027 4-star point guard who could be a reclass potential candidate. So Walters could be there, Diaz could be there. There's other guys, but once the fall recruiting period opened up in early September, and Syracuse and its peers could start going to open gyms at high schools as well as doing in-home visits, 3 guys that they've been in for in 2027 are Lyons at his school in Prince George's County in the DMV. It's Clinton Grace Christian School in Clinton, Maryland. So they've been in for him at his school. This past week, they were in for Zion Green, who's from Philadelphia, but is going to play for Mount Zion Prep in Lanham, Maryland, which is also in Prince George's County in the DMV. And then they've also been in for Theo Edema, who is a 4-star big. Zion Green is a 2027 5-star power forward. Theo Edema is a 2027 4-star center. And Lyons is a 2027 4-star point guard. I should probably say that, right? And Edema has already officially visited Syracuse. I think it was early September. Sometime in September. Zion Green took an unofficial to Syracuse, I believe, the last weekend in August. And Lyons has said more than once that he is visiting Syracuse. So as soon as I get the intel about when his visit is, whether it's official or unofficial, I'll share that here. But again, those are 3 guys that have visited or will visit, and that Syracuse has visited, in open gym settings and that sort of thing. So, that's my sense of 3 guys, along with maybe some of those Overtime Elite guys, among others, that Syracuse is kind of like honing in on right now. But again, it's somewhat early. They're just starting their junior years of high school, and their junior seasons haven't even started yet. So, but that's where we are with 2027 for right now, and I'll keep doing stuff on all the classes, including 2028 and 2029 at some point. But we're going to wrap up here today with the NCAA tournament. And not too long ago, there were multiple reports out there, including from Ross Dellinger of Yahoo. Yahoo Sports, and I think he does some stuff for On3 now. But anyway, he's one of the senior guys out there, and others. But they're talking about how it looks like the NCAA tournament might expand to 76 teams with a 12-game opening round played at different sites starting for the 2026-2027 season. And I've written about this topic. I don't know, like, I feel like they should just leave the NCAA tournament alone. It's at 68 now with the first four, and I like the way it is. The old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I get it. More teams, more revenue, more schools get in. My whole thing is, my position has always been, if you're going to expand it, does that mean we're going to get more like subpar power conference teams, or are you going to get more mid majors in? I mean, yeah, if it helps Syracuse, but like my whole thing is with Syracuse or any other team out there that's like, oh yeah, if we get 76 teams, we're going to have a better shot getting. Well, just win more games and then you could get into the field of 68. That's my whole thing. But we'll see. If expanding it by another 8 teams means we'll see some more mid majors in there, deserving teams that maybe didn't win their conference tournament but had really good regular seasons, versus like an ACC team or a Big Ten team that went 17-14 in the regular season. Well, actually, I think they're going up to 32 regular season games, but you know what I'm saying, like, just win more games. Anyway, so I bring that up and I'll follow that. I mean, that's obviously a larger story than just Syracuse stuff, but I've seen some articles out there, and obviously with the season coming up, like, do you all think that Syracuse could be an NCAA tournament team this year? It's obviously conjecture right now and prognostications because they haven't played a game yet, and they only returned 2 guys from last year, 2 big ones, and J.J. Starling and Donnie Freeman. But then they have, 5 prep commits and 6 transfers. So it's a vastly made over roster, just like a lot of other teams. On paper, I feel like this is a team that maybe could compete for the NCAA tournament. And they've got the non-conference. They've got some of those neutral site games out in Vegas, etc. In the ACCs, they don't play all the presumed heavyweights twice. So I think it's like it's like a challenging schedule, but it's not like doomsday. And Syracuse hasn't been in the NCAA tournament and missed it the last 4 years. The last time they were there, it was the COVID year, so to speak, and then they were a double-digit seed and went to the Sweet 16. But I'm not going to sit here and say, oh yes, they're definitely getting in or they're definitely not getting in, because I haven't seen them play a game yet. But if they can improve their defense and really cut down on turnovers, and they're solid from 3-point shooting, and they can get some transition scoring going, and obviously rebounding is always like a hot button topic, and they can remain healthy. Yeah, I think on paper this is a team that could compete for the NCAA tournament. Sure, why not? You got, again, fully healthy. You've got a leading scorer or leading assist man from the ACC from last year, Nate George, a transfer from Georgia Tech, running the point. I think he'll be better than the point guards last year. Again, no disrespect. And then assuming Starling's fully healthy, because he has had some stuff on his right hand and in social media posts. But he's supposedly, ready for the season. But starts at the 2, and I don't 100% know who started at the 3, but I think it might be the Oregon State transfer, Nate Kings, who's a really good 3-point shooter. But I don't know about a guy like Betsy from a transfer from Cincinnati. You would assume Donnie Freeman at the 4, and then William Kyle at the 5, and Kyle and the other centers aren't necessarily as tall as traditional big men in the past for Syracuse and whatnot, but I think this is just a much more athletic team. And hopefully that means that they protect the rim better in terms of block shots and rebound well. And again, their man-to-man defense hopefully is better, and switching and all that, because it just wasn't good last year. I'm always going to be curious how much, if any, zone they'll play. But, and the other thing for me is, can they go out there, and when they play the quote-unquote better teams, whether it's net rankings or top 25 rankings or whatever, and on the road, neutral sites, can they compete? Are they competing? Even if they're not winning every game, they're not going to go 31-0. If they do, I'll eat crow. But can they compete? Because the 2 seasons under Autry, in that first season, they won 20-12 overall and won 20 regular season games the first time in like 10 years. So it wasn't an awful season. Last year was bad. But, they would tend to get blown out by the better teams. So even if they're not winning every game, are they competitive? Are they competitive against Duke and North Carolina and Louisville and against Kansas and Houston out in Vegas and whoever else, you know? So I do think this is a team that can compete for the NCAA tournament. I'm not saying they will get in. And I think if they don't get in or don't get close to getting in, then I think we could see a change in the coaching staff. So anyway, drop me some comments. Let me know what you think. Hope you enjoyed today's show. As always, I will continue to do Syracuse football, basketball, and recruiting for both sports. And I appreciate you tuning in. This is Neil Adler with with Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. Slipped up there. Again, I really appreciate the support. I hope you're enjoying the show. Drop me comments and feedback. And have a great rest of your day. Tuesday, and tomorrow's Wednesday. So I'll talk to you again on Hump Day. Take care, friends.